many more to go, and we're seeing a story unfold differently across the board. This high ground squad only has 3 eliminations compared to someone like Repo Squad, who went with the W Key Fest. Who is going to walk away with the most amount of points when this is all over? That victory royale, those top placements mean so much, and Ronan is doing a little bit of everything, right? Earning his way closer and closer to placement, but also picking up those elims, and that's a refresher as well for him, like completely capping him off. He's going to be able to get to his squad mate and get the split as well. So just looking so good here.
And they're inside that 12 teams alive. A Slayer pushing forward here if they can. Really eyes on that top 3. We talked about you're only getting 1 point for every team that goes down until you get to that top 3, and that's when everything kicks in. You get 5, 6, and 5 ridiculous amounts of points right there for that top 3 on order. And Vortex going for the shake. I wonder if that was deliberate. Maybe trying to find out the solo on the low ground. Almost always, usually that's an accidental click, but here we have Tui, our RPG team, not being able to put it to use too much here. Suns has gone down. Tui see what they can push through. Trixie has gone down as well. Faulty's team has been kneecapped as Radius is still going. Doesn't need Slayer, doesn't need Fluxy. He's trying to do big things for power on the low ground as Muzz is doing big things for power on the high grounds.
Yeah, and Muzz is still controlling it. They have so much material. There is no looking back. This is literally a cakewalk victory here. They are walking their way all the way through to the final instances, the big placement points where things just jump up. If you can break this into that top 3, second place, first place, you're going to earn so many more points. It's like the elims don't even matter if you can get that high ground coming into the position that they've done it. And that's what they're continuing to do, just easing their way through this end game now.
Easing their way through it as there's some teams trying to power their way through it as we see them fall in the bottom left right now, going down. We're getting 3 different teams are following right now. Luda's up on the high ground here. Radius down below, and I can't see Luda's team winning this. I don't like to bring the caster curse out, but they've got the splashes there. I think they've also got some white meds as well. A lot of times in the meta right now, we didn't talk about this too much. Games are going to heal off. I don't know where the OCE is. We have 1 minute, just a little bit over until this zone fully closes. It's going back through old builds, which is going to keep these players a lot healthier through this one. So if it goes down to a heal off, you need to think, does Muzz, Luda, and Speedy have the ability to win that from the high ground? Or as you're seeing Muzz do now, they're going to drop down as Will drops into the box. Ronan, Ashes, and Will are playing so well. Ronan has 7 eliminations on the board. High ground wins games, but mid and low win tournaments because he is racking up the elims.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and that's what we talk about. There's no cutting corners, and Muzz understands that he has to come down. He's working his way down. 5-5 gets put 5 in the chest there, and he gets taken out. Muzz is also just hopping in here. Now they want a piece of the action, Ozzy. They want to come down. You can't lose all these points here. You will fall behind. The wins are just not going to be enough. But Ronan's still going. He's still going.
Ronan's still going, but it looks like they maybe stopped here. The stair goes on top of him. The mountain, no, they're under the stair.
No.
Ronan, his reign, his run is going to be ended by a misplaced stair, but 10 eliminations. We see Muzz, Luda, and Speedy coming out on top, showing why I hyped up Coach Timmy as the biggest brain in OCE. But is the placement enough? We talked about it. 30 points for the win monster, but that was so many eliminations. Repulse and Ronan's team, they were fragging out.
Exactly just that, but Ronan's team in particular was even better. 14 as a team, as a trio, they picked up 14-10 just on Ronan alone. What a game. I think the elims alone just allows them to overthrow best first place without a doubt, just with all the elims. So ridiculous game for them.
I think so. That's over 20 points for the eliminations and then over 20 points of placement as well. That is a massive first game. And I wonder how many players haven't been paying attention to this switch in the format. A lot of people haven't seen it. First FNCS broadcast for OC. First FNCS where we've seen different scoring through the rounds. Round 3 yesterday was your standard 25 points for a win, 1 per elimination. This one has jumped up. And I think that's going to be the tale of today. I want to see what happened to Repulse's team. They had the elims in the mid ground, but I think it fizzled out towards early end game. But man, OCE delivering on the aggression.
Yeah, operating as a 2-man squad there. You know, things went a little crazy at a moment there, but either way, we are going to have to send it over to the desk, right? Also, we got to have these guys break it all down and show us maybe, you know, their takes on all the action.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. As you said, crazy was a word thrown around by Monster. That's exactly how we felt. We were talking through the entire thing. But Timmy, I see a big smile there, and that's well earned. I mean, Speedy, Luda, Muzz, Ozzy already is praising that big brain, but you had it. You had the prediction.
Yeah, well, I mean, they did it in the way that I wasn't expecting it to. So they, like I said, I thought they were going to play mid-ground for consistency, but I'm not too sure if anyone caught it on the broadcast. But what they did when half popped, it pulled really far, and essentially they just bounced it. They used the bounce pads, got ahead of zone, and they just cranked up for height, cranked some 90s as you saw. But as we go through here, what are you seeing here, Fallout, in the initial game?
Nothing but madness is probably the one word to use. We talked about in the pre-game and the pre-show the aggression of the Oceania region for a variety of reasons. One, the mechanical skill that they have in this region is ridiculous. Two, it's the skill gap and the differential from the top elite teams, the S tier, to the A, B, or maybe C tier is such a high difference. So that's why you see a lot of teams play aggressive early. Really, it was the Repulse and Forbes show. Tyrax, of course, got eliminated early, but Repulse and Forbes continued to slay out, continued to play highly aggressive, and it paid off for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we just watched some of these clips here, we see the way that some teams decided to go about managing their surge. We saw Repulse and Forbes just decide to get in and look for elims early. And we actually saw that from quite a few teams. We see Raptor here getting in, we see Forbes jumping in as you see quite often. But yeah, there's a lot of variety in OCE, and it's one of my reasons is why it's my favorite region. There's so many ways that these people go about playing the game because there is such a gap in skill.
Yeah, that is incredibly true. And I think what's been awesome to see is how these players can stack up against the rest of the world. It is fun to watch how good they are, and of course, watching them slay out in lobbies like this. But when you put them against top lobbies from the rest of the world, it's obviously very, very impressive. And I think this is a good example of it. I think this is the point in the mid game where Tyrax did end up getting taken out, but the keying that came through from Repulse, Forbes, and Tyrax was ridiculous. Tyrax did, of course, get knocked. Repulse and Forbes cleaned up the rest, but they ended up with a significant, I believe, 10-plus elimination game. That got them quite a few points. And keep in mind here, too, the reason we're seeing such aggression, well, it's the change in format. It's the fact that we have 2 points awarded per elimination. So a 10-plus elimination game will get you 20-plus points, and that's obviously in addition to any placement you get.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I talked about Forbes getting in. You can see it right there. Forbes really just getting in, looking to be aggressive here as he takes out Zorka and Scam's team. One thing that I think will be really impressive here as we watch this is we're going to cut away here and we're going to see who's actually on high ground. We saw initially, I don't know if you remember, we actually saw Bailey and Spiker on high, but then as soon as half popped, we saw Muzz, Speedy, and Luda crank ahead and take height straight away. And we're seeing now some clips of people playing mid-ground. What we're going to see, Basil, Jace, and Vortex, they love playing low ground, controlling space and getting kills as solos. And from there, it was just all-out mayhem. We saw Ronin going off. 10 kills as a solo, 14 elims as a team. Absolutely ridiculous. They're just jumping in on people. Brilliant to watch.
Yeah, we saw Ronin right there with 5, so that goes to show how much he slayed out in late game. That's why we talk about it often. Make it to late game, especially if you're playing mid to low ground. You heard Ozzy say it, but mid ground, low ground wins championships, and that's why the fact that you can pop off and go from 5 eliminations to 10 in that late game, that is what Ronin did so incredibly well. But in the end, high ground, of course, is going to win you the game. And in this scenario, Speedy, Looter, and Muzz, they did it in a way that's not necessarily characteristic to how they play. Typically, they play low and mid ground, but Ozzy hit the nail on the head. If you have a chance to take high ground, if you're a top team, you're going to take that high ground. And the fact that they're able to pop a bouncer, crank some 90s, and take high ground in the mid game right there, and then they held on to it through the end. Well, they got them a first place finish, got them to 30 points from placement with the Victory Royale on top of all the elimination points they got, Vandy.
I'm glad you said that because let's take a look at the match standings. I know that we've talked a lot about how we've got placements kind of coming through, but we saw a lot of eliminations taking place. And like the casters were saying, maybe not everyone's aware of this format just yet. Maybe they were taken back by how vicious we were once that 50-50 kind of popped. So it was just real interesting to see like the different play styles coming through. And I like, Timmy, as you said, our region has a lot to offer in sense of this. I mean, with the other major regions, like with NA, with EU, everyone's got their own different flavor, their own different play style. So I'm just wondering now in terms of how we're setting up for this first match, how things are really going to go from here, essentially. Because, of course, I feel like the first match almost always feels like a warm-up. Would you agree, Timmy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a couple things that are really important to note. Firstly, we didn't see it on the broadcast, but we actually saw Worthy, Jinx, and Alec go down early. We saw Worthy getting taken out as a solo in, I think it was second or third zone, which is really uncharacteristic. Usually they make it through the late game very consistently. They're a very, very consistent trio, and it's one of the reasons that I'm guessing Fallout decided to pick them as his eventual champions. But One thing that I think is also really important to notice, Repulse, Forbes, and Tyrax will continue to play this way. It's going to happen. They got, was it 10 elims? Something like that. They're playing absolutely out of their minds. They're going to keep playing aggressive because as we load up the standings here, despite the fact that they ended up getting elimed on first moving, they're actually going to be quite high up because of that 2 points per elim scoring system.
Exactly right. Well, it sounds like the standings might be ready, so we'll see if we can get that graphic up. But I also do know that match 2 is going to be ready and underway as well. So let's go to the casters. Let's see where they're at, because like I said, match 2 is underway. We're probably just going to jump straight into this one, and then we can always bring it back to the match standings after as well, because we've only been through match number 1. Aussie, Monster, you guys there? Because please take us away.
We are here. We are more than excited to jump into game number 2 right now. We did miss the standings there, but I can run you